Hello, everybody. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whichever time zone you're at the moment. I hope that everyone is keeping safe. Welcome to another webinar series brought to us by Cypher Learning. So I am Jen Padernal. I am the Global Director of EdTech for Cypher Learning, and I will be your session host for today. So I hope that everyone is gearing up and excited for today's session. A little bit of a background about me. I have been in the education industry, education technology and training industry for more than 20 years already. Please do not count my age. And I am also a strong advocate of disaster-proof education. So today I have a guest. I have a special guest that'll be joining us for today in today's session. Masood Sheikh. That's his name. Masood drives the business growth for Cypher Learning in the Middle East and Africa region. And he has spent the last 15 years in business transformation and technology consulting roles for different organizations such as Microsoft and Dell. Oh, imagine those are two big companies. And he is also a believer. He believes in crypto and robotics. Wow, that's a fantastic profile. Fits perfectly with our session topic for today. And we're hoping that we want this session to be very interactive. So we are encouraging everybody to just type in your question in the chat forum or in the chat box, or when you want to share something, please feel free to post them in the chat area. So our session topic for today is hybrid workplace or hybrid workplace in the time of pandemic. Now that the world is starting to ease up a little bit again, and there are organizations that has already started opening and kind of like calling their employees back to work after almost 2 years of working from home, I guess it's about time for us to talk a little bit about hybrid workplace as an alternative work model. So Masood will join us in discussion today, and we are hoping that we can provide you with more perspective on a hybrid workplace model. Let me just try and see if Masood can say hi, just to test the mic.
Hi, everyone.
There
Thank you
you
so much,
go.
Jen.
All right,
I'm
now his
super
mic is.
excited to be here. Thank you
We're
so
happy.
much.
We're happy to have you, Masood. So let's help me, Masood. Let's take a little bit of a look back in the year 2020. I still have this hashtag. The struggle is real. Imagine when the world suddenly just stopped last year. Things were put into a halt. Everything stopped. School, work, events, all of those other activities that we're used to doing. We're not able to do that anymore when the pandemic happened, especially in the world of work. Imagine we pre-pandemic, we're all used to getting up in the morning, dressing up for work, putting on our best OOTD, and then driving to work or even taking the bus as part of our daily routine. And then the pandemic happened, and then the
Yeah,
world
yeah.
just stopped. Even even training and working became the new normal. And probably this is because this is what most companies thought is the safest way for everybody. And I, for one, you and I, for one, would probably agree with this. And because we're currently experiencing the same work setup. But now that in some countries, where COVID cases are starting to decrease, which we all hope that it will be gone pretty soon, more and more establishments and organizations are also starting to open up and having their employees return from work. And because of this, there's another struggle, Masood. Returning to work is becoming a struggle. You know, now the struggle is like, what do I do when I return to work? We have a lot of concerns now. A lot of employees are concerned about um, the physical and social distancing at work. They start to think of many things. They start to become anxious, having a hard time to adjust, especially when all have been working from home in more than a year, almost 2 years. So they worry about, like what I mentioned, physical and social distancing, wearing of mask for a long period of time, which sometimes is also kind of like, a struggle for everybody. the anxiety of getting infected, worrying about the commute, worrying about our family, that when we, we get home, we don't know what we're carrying back home to us. So creating a hybrid workplace is kind of like what other companies and other organization leaders are seeing that will help address these concerns. So we can look at creating a hybrid workplace. So there are a lot of companies now considering this setup as well. While there are still others who are still contemplating if this is really a good or effective way for a work setup. But Masood and I will try and help provide you with some perspective that might help you make a decision on whether you want to go with a hybrid, you want to go with a traditional, you want to go with a remote, or whatever model works for you. So Masood, let me just turn over a little bit to Masood here. If you can kind of just provide us with a little bit of an insight, what's your take on hybrid workspace?
Well, thank you, Jen, for the quick introduction. And this is a very interesting topic we are having a conversation on today. The world is moving definitely into a different direction with COVID and the new Omicron variant, which is found out. And what I see that the hybrid workspaces are also known as flexible workspace in some areas, and this is being adopted very fast across the world. And we have seen that the combination of working together both in an organization, whether it's a small or a big or a corporate, it doesn't matter the size of the organization. This is impacting everyone, both in the corporate world as well as in education business, which we are also focused on. And hybrid workspaces are infusing new ways of building trust, right? So,
Yeah.
and it brings a lot of transparency. It also has a new thoughtful way of working that also contributes to the balancing the needs of both the organization as well as the employee needs. And this is very important, by the way. And one of the significant drivers for adapting flexible workspace or hybrid workspaces is technology, and that
Yeah.
remains as a key contributor, right? A quick
Yeah.
point I want to highlight here is that a simple explanation of what hybrid workspace is: it gives people the flexibility to work part remotely and part from an office, and that's an agreement where an employee and employer both come to a conclusion that some of the deliverables can be achieved staying home, and if needed they can return back to work and report and collaborate with the team members. So it's a combination of both, and that's the reason we call it as hybrid. And I think the future is great with this.
Yeah, thank you, Masood. That's a great insight. So just to encapsulate that, so a hybrid workspace or a hybrid workplace is kind of like a model, as you mentioned, that combines working from home with working from the office. Yeah. So and I like when you mentioned that it's pretty flexible and we have different ways by which we can achieve that. And speaking of the different ways by which we can achieve a hybrid workplace or set up a hybrid workplace, I have here some approaches that we want to share with everybody on the different approaches to hybrid workplace. So we have a few here, but there are actually a lot of approaches that a lot of experts are sharing to everybody now. One of which is portioning approach. Sounds like a meal when you're portioning your meal. So portioning approach is a portion. It's when a portion of the employees are working from home, like what Masood mentioned, and a portion are working at the office. So in this approach, what you need to look at, what the leaders or managers need to look at, are the different responsibilities and tasks of employees, and see which of those tasks are possible to be done at home and which tasks are supposed to be done in the office, because this one is kind of like really the hybrid part. So this will help lessen the number of people. This approach will help lessen the number of people that are going in the office, which also means that the viral load and the chance of getting infected will be lessened. So that's also something that this approach can help us. Another approach is the rotation approach. So a rotation approach, it's kind of like an alternate groups of employees can work from home and others in the office and then switch schedules. Unlike in the portioning, a portion is really working from home, kind of like for a longer period of time, or maybe permanently working from home. And then the rest are really in the office, because in the portioning approach, there are works that cannot be done from home. Imagine if you're a machine operator, you cannot bring the machine home with you, so you'll have to be in the office. And those whose tasks can be done at home, they'll be working at home. So that's portioning. While the rotation approach, it's kind of like really there's a schedule. Alternately, some group will be working from home, say in 2 weeks, group A is working from home, group B is in the office, and then they switch, B at home, A at the office. So that's kind of like the rotation approach. This is also one thing that the companies can look at. There's another approach which is called the on-call approach. Well, everybody is working from home and only goes to the office as needed. So, for example, when there are special meetings or planning session that has to be done within the office, or special events or online fixing of some issues. So these are the on-call approach. So again, in the on-call approach, it's most likely everybody is working from home and they only go to the office on days that they are needed. So especially on days that something needs to be fixed in the office. And then the last one is the choose your own setup. I think I like this one. Choose your own setup in the office. So employees, you can be allowed to choose their own workplace setup, or their preference on how they want to set up their workspace in the office. So the setup that they think will make them feel safer and more comfortable, but not totally isolated. This is important, because when you're doing hybrid and you're the one who's working from home, sometimes we feel like we're being isolated from the rest of the world. And when there are important decisions or discussions that's probably happening in the office, in the physical office, we feel like, hey, I'm not being updated. Probably I don't know what's happening anymore. So there's some sort of feeling of isolation. So when we allow our employees, for example, to choose their own setup in the office, which is kind of like, sounds like fun to me, they're kind of like building their own space that makes them feel safer. So and that's comfortable for them. So Masood, for example, I have a question for you here now that we're in this part of the discussion. Given these approaches, do you think that hybrid approach is right for business organization or even an educational institution? And do you think would it be cost effective or more costly at that matter?
Indeed, Jen, I think based on what we're discussing today, I mean, I just heard you highlighting about the hybrid workspaces giving comfortability for employees. You also highlighted about how hybrid workspaces contribute in terms of people coming up with their own innovation and thought process when working from distance places. But also because human is a social animal, at times they definitely need to collaborate, meet other colleagues, and understand what's happening in the organization. So this mixture is very, very important. And both the businesses and education institutions can harness the value of the hybrid workspace. And why I could highlight a few points here, right? For example, the pandemic has predominantly accelerated the adoption of hybrid workspaces, right? In a sense, if you look back to the history, hybrid workspaces kind of existed in the past. So
Yeah,
if you
that's
see the
right.
software development industry, it has been for over like 25, 30 years. And most of the remote work which happens, like the outsourced work which is given to Asian countries by Western countries, most of the work happens, like even today 70% of the work happens remote. And it
Yeah.
has been effective, and the technology industry have survived this kind of remote working uh, throughout last 30 years. So it's a very new thing for a lot of organizations, but the technology industry have managed it. On the other hand, if you see how the pandemic has forced and enforced the adoption of the remote work slash the hybrid model, which we are talking about, the hybrid workspace. It has significant growth which is happening in the adoption with regards to the industries. For example, the industries where people do not need to physically be present, those are the industries, or the especially the skills where the people do not physically have to be present. For example, you talk about someone who's doing digital marketing, or someone who's doing coding or software development, or someone who can handle things on a laptop, for example, voice-based jobs like call center jobs, or you talk about
Yeah.
accounting. All these are outsourced, or these are managed remotely. uh, the final point I want to highlight is, especially in the education sector,
Mhm.
we have seen both the children as well as the educators adopting to this newer way of collaboration or newer way of working. Uh, like you have seen in 2019 and pretty much the entire 2020, schools were shut off in most of the countries. 90+% of the children were kind of displaced with the education impact, right, due to the shutdown of the schools. But on the other hand, there was phenomenal rise in the technology adoption when it comes to, like, for example, collaborative engagement by using technologies like Zoom, or
Yeah,
training
that's right.
platforms such as, like, for example, what we offer as Cypher Learning. So this is great. And on the other side, even the countries are adapting to a newer wave. For example, countries like UAE, where I live in Dubai, and then there are 20 plus other countries globally who are offering a new work culture called Nomad Visa. So Nomad is like, you don't have to be physically present in the country where you are working. You can live anywhere, but still, work and deliver your job. And then the new wave has come where a lot of governments have also announced that they don't need their employees to work, like, 5 day a week or 6 day a week. They can work 4 days, or even there are countries who are still discussing how they can reduce the working 3 days and leave the rest of the 4 days for employee to focus on well-being, performance. And they have
Yes.
seen that the performance have grown more than 25 to 30%. So
Yes.
this is amazing. This is amazing.
And that's work-life balance also. You know, if you can imagine before how people have started working, it's more like 5 to 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, or even more than 8 hours a day. So now it's changing a lot. A lot of companies are focusing more on health and well-being of the employees, self-care, especially when the pandemic happened, where everybody was just so stressed, so depressed. So it's very important. It's very important that we pay attention also to the health and well-being of the employees, and probably having this kind of setup might help. You're being closer to your family, at the same time feeling safe, but you're still being productive. A lot of companies are also focusing now more on productivity, more on output than counting the number of hours that you stay in the office. But still, it's not a guarantee that someone is being productive if you're in the office for more than 8 hours. And it's good that you mentioned those benefits, because here, in addition to what you mentioned of the benefits of doing this kinds of model, embracing this kind of model for work, these are some of the benefits and of a hybrid workplace. We were just talking about mental health, emotional well-being. So this is kind of like number one in my list: mental and emotional well-being of employees. So in a hybrid workplace, it should put a priority to the employees' well-being and encourage a work-life balance. I know, and we have our colleagues here who are joining us today, and probably they're thinking, "Hey, Jen, you have to tell that to yourself as well." So it can help ease anxiety of employees. It may have that they may have about returning to work or physical workspace, or having to commute in a public transportation. So this is very critical. The first one is very critical for those employees who are, especially those immunocompromised or caring for one that's immunocompromised at home. So having this kind of setup will probably help them. Also, it's economical. We were talking about cost effectiveness. So companies can probably save a lot of resources when some, most, or even half of the employees are working from home. Like they'll save on internet, electricity, the rental of space, the rental expenses, the need for other facility costs. So companies won't need to look for a larger space, which also means larger rental fees. So if they have smaller space, probably smaller rental fees. My cousin works in, let me just use my cousin as an example. She works for a travel agency wherein what their office is doing is that if you're a new employee, you start working in the office for X number of months. As you ease up and master the skills of what you do in work, they start to move them to working from home. So new employees are working in the office. If you are staying there for X number of months, they start moving you to work from home, providing you with everything that you need to be able to perform your work. So that's, I think, more economical for them because they're not renting out a big space. And then also another benefit would probably be less turnover. So employees will worry less about their safety. It's less likely that they will quit and find another company that puts priority on their safety first. So that's another benefit of probably looking at a hybrid workplace. And then keeping a talent pool is easier. So talent pool, organizations offering a combination of physical and remote work setup for employees are most likely to have a larger talent pool. What I meant by that is that they can hire employees from different geographic location or region to work for them. And we both can attest to that because our company is in that kind of setup where we have different employees and colleagues from different parts of the world. So we can keep all of those talent instead of, say, the location or the region being a hindrance for someone to accept their job offer. Having this kind of setup will help us keep that larger talent pool. And then also it's safer, you know, having a hybrid workplace promotes safer work for environment for everybody. So it can reduce the spread of, contagious viruses or diseases. They can choose to work from home if they're feeling a little bit under the weather. A hybrid workplace can also be an alternative to organization whose employees are a little bit more hesitant to get vaccinated. But of course, we're encouraging everybody to get vaccinated. But we cannot avoid also that there are still some who are a little bit hesitant, and that could be an alternative. You have a talent, someone who's really good, but still thinking of getting vaccinated, and you don't want to lose that employee. So probably, having them work from home while the other works from the office is a good setup. But again, we're hopefully everybody can get vaccinated. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, I'm an advocate of disaster-proof education. So we can now have a disaster-proof organization wherein work and training continues in a hybrid workplace, especially when you have the proper technology that you can use, like a learning management system. Masood later on will tell us a little bit something about that. And if I can use myself as an example, I work for both Masood and I work for Cypher Learning, and we have an LMS called Matrix LMS that different companies can use for their training needs. And I will let Masood talk a little bit more about that later on. But along with these benefits, there are also challenges, right? Masood, this cannot be avoided. The challenges will always be there when we're setting up a new work model. So these are just some of the challenges that I see happening in a hybrid workplace. Number one is not everyone can do hybrid, be that an individual person or be that an organization. Not all employees can work remotely. For example, the frontliners, machine operators, those that requires physical presence, will be probably at a disadvantage. I have a friend who works in an elderly facility, and when I asked my friend how it's been, how it's coping, and he said, "Well, I cannot work from home because I cannot bring all of the elderlies work home with me." So that's kind of like a challenge. Another one in different countries, connectivity might be an issue. I'm in the Philippines, and we're not we're one of those countries whose internet connectivity is not that very good. So connectivity might be an issue. Not all employees or everybody will have a strong connectivity or stable internet connection. So joining meetings online while others are in the office might be might make them feel that they're missing out on something. And I know that it's happening. We both know that it's happening a lot to everybody. We're in the middle of the meeting, all of a sudden you lose your internet connection. So that's kind of a challenge as well. There's also a challenge on productivity issues. So some managers, which I hope not, might think that just because an employee is working at home that they are less productive than the others. So this is a common misconception. Or employees might feel that even if they're productive at home, their managers are not seeing that because they're not physically together in an office. So this is kind of like also a challenge. It's more of like a feeling that an employee would have that they're being less productive or not being noticed because they're at home, and those that are working in the office are the ones just being noticed by the manager. There will also be probably an exclusion issue, so where people working from home might feel that they're being excluded in some critical and crucial conversations or important decisions that needs to be made just because they're not physically present in the office together with some of their coworkers. And then, of course, the feeling of isolation. So employees might feel that, hey, I'm being isolated, especially for extroverted people who's not used to being confined in the four walls of their homes for a very long period of time. It's probably going to be um, an issue. So Masood, given these challenges, I'm curious on your thoughts on what do you think would be the biggest mistake an organization manager or leader might do or commit when they as they start to build their hybrid strategy for well, a strategy for a hybrid workplace. And probably so
Jen,
much just to follow up on that, after how do you see Cypher Learning's platform as a tool for hybrid workspace?
sure. Jen, uh, you brought up a very crucial point, talking about the manager and the subordinate or the teams, trust during the conversation. And if the team do not have trust, if the employees do not have trust on each other with regards to can their subordinates or can their colleagues perform the job better, that's where the challenge definitely begins. So that's one of the biggest mistake, and that drives down from leadership. So leadership needs to kind of fully accept and believe, as well as invest in hybrid workspaces. And hybrid workspaces investment is not just about like setting up like facilities for remote work and so on. It's also about empowering your employees in terms of how they can collaborate, how they can think, and what they can do, and what are the technology tools you're giving, right? So in a business strategy or a technology strategy, the typical, if you have everyone heard about digital transformation, and businesses, when they are going through digital transformation, they need to focus on three core components. One is the people, second is the process, and third is the technology. And these are the three key ingredients again for hybrid workspaces as well, right? And leadership need to trust and believe in that. And what I mean by that is, leadership should always preach about it, should carry that similar vision and clarity, and that can only be attained if they have clear strategy. Okay. Second is, they should have a roadmap, they should have a plan, like where they are
Yes.
starting, what is their last year or like last 5 years, how they have been doing, what is their future plan, how they are going to attain this, how they can avoid risk. Okay. And then this roadmap should cover like these three core components, like people, process, and technology. On the other hand, uh, it is also important for business leaders to have clear assessments of their various functions and operations. So for example, in a school or education environment, the school authorities or school management should have clarity, like what may go wrong, how can they
Yes.
handle if there is something which will go wrong, how their students will react, are teachers ready to take up the new technology, can they actually teach by using technology tools, can they train their employees, or can they train their students, can the students use a learning management platform? And is it easy for the students to use learning management platform? So these are some of the questions where the business leaders should focus on. And it's not like simple click and go. And mostly, like,
That's right.
technology is definitely an enabler, but technology is not a change maker, right? A change making happens when there is a proper marriage between the people, the technology, and the management, which is overseeing these two, to strike a balance of adoption, right?
Yes.
And the very, very important aspect again is how the management of the organization, whether it is a school or a corporate, is bringing this technology and introducing this technology, right? So for example, what Jen was referring about, like Cypher Learning is known across the world for offering the best learning management tools. We are an edtech company, and we have been doing this for last 12 years. Like Cypher Learning has been doing this for last 12 years, and both in the education sector, which is covering the K to 20, and in the corporate world, we have seen how employees react to a poorly managed technology interface when it comes to learning.
True.
And
That's
I
true.
I I personally speak to, and even Jen for that matter, or pretty much 80% of our customer facing teams hear this from our customers on a regular basis, that they are stuck, they do not know how to move forward, they are not happy with the existing learning platforms. And one of the main reasons for that, it's not technology which is bad, it is the way the technology is used by the
Yes.
employees or the management, or the way the technology is actually built in terms of adoption, in terms of user experience, in terms of user interface. So these are very few components which I wanted to highlight. Secondly, if you look at Neo or Matrix, so Neo is a product which focuses on the K to 20 segment, on the education sector, and Matrix is focused for businesses, corporates, government organizations, and we have more than 20,000 organizations across the world using our platform, and 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 millions of users across 100 plus countries. And why did Cypher Learning achieve this in less than 12 years? That's an important question. Is because our founder has been a teacher himself, so he understands that uh, a technology is not just a piece of technology which anyone and everyone can use. It's only usable if it is extremely user friendly, it has that intuitive features, and if it has the ability for anyone who's non-technical can use it, right? And then Cypher learning tools are also these are powerful pack tools. I call them power pack, and they're we are moving towards the intelligent learning platform phase, and this is where Cypher learning is putting all our focus in terms of how we can transform the learning industry. On the other hand, what LMSs can do, and especially what Neo and Matrix can contribute to, it brings the ability for your workforce to be fully aware of what's happening in the organization, how they can comply to the rules and regulations of the organization. It also boosts the confidence in an employee. So if they know their subject, if they are aware of what is the organizational rules, if they are aware of the do's and don'ts and the best practices of the industry, and if the employee is able to translate that through a digital platform like
Yes.
Matrix or Neo to their employees, then the productivity will boost. And there have been hundreds of surveys in the market which talks about or maps the productivity of an organization or an employee related to the best learning tools. That means, like, there is an industry survey which I was reading recently, and for the matter, both in Microsoft and Dell, where I have spent some part of my career, they encourage their employees to spend 8% of their time learning. You can imagine, 8% of time learning. That means the employees have to spend a lot of time using a technology which can help them enhance their skills, right? And the reason for that is that 8% of learning is a return on investment which employers can reap from the employees, because end of the day, that's going to help them bring and contribute more to the organizational success. Finally, For business leaders, it is again very important, because they will be able to have clear cut 360-degree visibility on what's happening in the organization, so they can see which what type of skills the employees are having, where are my best employees, how are they transitioning from the business requirements what I have versus where they are today. And they can also have clear visibility in terms of like why these 100 employees are performing better versus another 500
Yes.
employees I have. And that visibility they can get if they have a good learning management tool, because that learning management tool gives them deeper insights. And especially, like for example, our reporting components, what
Capability. Yes.
Cypher Learning has, the capability is amazing. Like the business leaders, as well as the department owners or the school principals or teachers per se, can have a detailed view, insight in terms of the day-to-day learning, the skills they are gathering, how they are accelerating the learning and the productivity, how it is being mapped. Some of the important components, such as learning skill mapping, or we talk about gamification, these are changing the way employees and students engage with the learning components. And that again, this also builds a lot of confidence, and it brings a lot of trust, because people enjoy being recognized, people enjoy being
Yes.
getting a pat on the back. And in a remote environment, like let's say someone is working from home, how do you pat his back? You cannot. So the
Exactly.
best way is to reward him, award him digitally. And that can happen with gamification as a component. And beyond everything, management can take strategic decisions if they know how the organization is performing. And that can be also attained to a major extent by a learning management platform, because it gives you a clear clarity between your employee performance versus the knowledge they have. So you
Yes.
will always know the people who have full knowledge about your organization, the business model, and how you are interacting with your customers. If your employees know that, then they are the one who are good at delivering, versus someone who do not know how the organizational processes work. And how do you ensure that your organizational processes, the customer focus vision what you have, how do you actually show that, or teach that to an employee, is by using a very good learning management platform, which like Cypher Learning offers. So this is where I would like to like finally point out that building an engagement and collaboration is extremely important, but that can only be reinforced, and the trust can be bought in only with
Yes.
use of good digital tools and technology tools. And this is where Cypher Learning has been bridging the gaps and breaking the barriers. And the future is amazing, and I really look forward to see how we move forward. And you will hear from both me and Jen in coming days on further sessions on something similar.
That's fantastic insight, Masood, especially when you mention about planning and how technology can help actually combat these challenges, so that leaders or managers planning to build their own hybrid workplace can avoid making those mistakes that will make this model fail. And having said that, before we entertain questions, because there are already questions coming in the chat box. So these are just in addition to what Masood has already mentioned on how we can combat those challenges. Here are some of the tips by which we can have a successful implementation of a hybrid workplace. So one is, let's try to prioritize safety. Make the workplace a safe haven for returning employees, so that they won't feel the anxiety, they won't feel anxious, they will not fear, they will not be worried about getting sick or being infected when they are in the physical office. We also need to make sure that we make it inclusive. Make sure that we involved, or you involve as a leader, you involve your employees in the process and ask for their ideas and opinions and their thoughts on how to make this model works best for everybody. And then, of course, Masood mentioned about trust and balance. So maintain fairness and balance. Let's try to make sure that those who can and cannot work remotely are given fair and balanced attention by the managers. Communication is also a key factor. So maintain a regular and open communication between the employees and the managers and the company's plan when it comes to returning to work. This is very important. Let us know, let your employees know what are your plans, what would be the safety precautions, the measures, for how long are we going to be staying working from home, for how long are we going to be staying working in the office, what would be the approach, for how long are those approach going to be in effect when it's implemented. So it's very important to communicate that to your employees so that they would know where they are and they can prepare for a hybrid workplace. And then, of course, invest in technology. And Masood emphasizes very, very nicely, um, especially the tools like the learning management system that Cypher Learning is offering, Matrix and Neo, both for Neo for schools and Matrix for businesses. We need to invest in technology that will make the managers, the leaders, and the employees stay connected. Leverage on the connectivity, leverage on the system that will help you continue the employee education, the employee training, and make sure that this technology are going to help you assess, monitor, and track the progress of the employees taking their trainings wherever they are, whether they're at home, whether they're at the office. So invest on these kinds of technology and make sure that you adopt the right tools. These tools that would make your employee want to continuously learn new things. And Masood gave a really very good insight and points on that. Invest in tools like a learning management system that will make learning still happen anytime and anywhere. So these are some of the tips that we can provide you as you contemplate and as you think about looking at this new model of working. So whether that's going to be hybrid, fully remote, or model that will help you continuously serve your customer. So that we hope that these tips are helpful for you, and those insights that Masood has already provided, they're really fantastic. Now, before my last slide, let's entertain questions, because there's a question here in the chat, and the question is, how can you balance meetings? This is a very good question. How can you balance meetings? Which should weigh more, virtual or in-office meetings? Uh, Masood, would you like to take that question before I give my insight on that? So the question is, how can we balance meetings? Which one should be way more, virtual or in office?
Well, Jen, the answer for me, I mean, like I will give my personal view, and then I'll talk about what's happening generally with around people. I see my colleagues and the people around. Personally, I like virtual meetings. Reason is that like I have seen myself being more productive in like virtual meetings, because I have enough time to prepare. I don't have to rush, like I'm not spending 1 hour, 2 hours in traffic. I'm not stressed about where to find my car parking. I'm not stressed
Yes.
about like how am I dressed. I'm not stressed about like what's happening around me. I'm more focused on my work. I'm able to deliver the best of me, and
Mm-hmm.
this is what I think is me. For example, I'm comfortable with virtual meetings, and that doesn't mean I don't enjoy physical. I definitely do enjoy physical. I love meeting and greeting people. I love dining out, or like collaborating with people. I think it's about, there's no straight answer saying which one is good. It's also about individuals preferences, but also it's also about the need of the hour, like what does the
That's true.
organization is asking about. So
Yeah,
I think that's my view.
that's true. And we will make that
Yeah,
answer hybrid, because anyone who knows me would probably say, oh, if Jen will answer that, she would probably choose an in-office meeting, because I'm a super extroverted person and I love being around people. So for me, um, and hybrid works perfectly for us now, Masood, because you're more in
absolutely.
virtual meeting, and then I can be in the office doing like the face-to-face meeting from time
Absolutely.
to time. And if you remember, the participants, if you remember earlier, I mentioned about the on-call type of approach. So if an in-office meeting is needed, it probably depends on the need for that meeting. So for example, and I was just talking to our VP during a meeting yesterday, and we were talking about strategic planning. And us being geographically dispersed, having a strategic planning for 4 hours would be kind of like challenging for someone in the CST time zone and in the Philippines time zone. If we say we'll do it in the morning CST time, that will be from midnight until the next morning in the Philippines or in other time zone. So I guess you're right in saying there's no straight answer. It really depends on the need, whether a meeting can be done virtually or a meeting can be done in office. All right. So another question is, oh, this is also interesting. How can you measure KPIs for employees working remotely and those who choose to work in the office? Any thoughts on that, Masood? Because
This,
we're working, we're all working in the office, and definitely I know that KPIs are being measured in employees of Typer Learning.
I think KPIs don't really change much, except in terms of like, it depends on the profile as well. For example, I've seen software companies measuring their employees on the number of hours they're spending
Yes.
sitting on the system and coding. Now that's how their productivity is measured, because their availability on a system matters, because if they're not on a system, they don't code. So that's one example. So the KPI measurement is situational, but the most important factor is the trust what you bring into your employees, and that's a two-sided effect. So like if an employee shows trust, an employee also has that social obligation that over a period they will also start showing back the same trust, and then the productivity increases. So the KPI is just a way of measuring these things, but I think together as an organization, you will end up achieving it if you have right technology tools as well. One of the important components, for example, in our Matrix and Neo platforms, is that once you can do like spontaneous assessments, and these are
Yes.
and just by giving some kind of gamification rewards, or
Yes.
organizations can decide that, okay, instead of just reward, I can give a dinner voucher for employees who are participating on a quick survey. And these surveys are just checking on a regular basis, like the way you do it for your school kids. Like I do my knowledge test of my kids on a certain topic randomly, and if they answer those, I just give them a chocolate. And we are human beings, whether it's a kid or an employee. It's about checking what's happening on a regular basis, and I think tools, technology tools, have key role. But more than technology tools, I think the human trust plays a very significant role here. Sure.
And a lot of companies now are being more output oriented rather than counting the number of hours that they're working. And it's good that you mentioned the assessment tools that Matrix LMS has, because if the company really are keen into using some metrics or measuring KPIs, they can configure Matrix LMS to do that. And you also mentioned that, yeah, I know that there are um, softwares that you can use now to know that
Monitor.
whether you monitor whether they're working from home. I see this in some of the people I know, that they log in and the office knows that they're logged in. There's also like the number of minutes that they're away from their computer, so that's how they're some are measuring their KPIs, but other organizations would have a different way of measuring it. As you mentioned, trust is very important. There's the leaders who work on the basis of trust. I trust you that without closely monitoring what you're doing, you're producing an output that's meant for you to do. And we can definitely see that. You can definitely see that. You would see it in the way that they're delivering the output to you. So for example, in our case, I was just measuring, like doing some analytics last night in a report, and my team has rendered more than 800 hours just for this month of services to clients. So imagine that. That's one way for me to measure KPI. So we have just have a reporting system. That will allow you to see how much your employees are achieving the KPIs that's expected of them. All right, another question here. What should be the priority if we fully transition to a hybrid setup? I'll take this one first because there's kind of like a lot of things that you can prioritize. You're seeing the tips here. Prioritize safety is one, but also look at your capability as an organization to do hybrid setup, because it will require you to have a technology that will allow your employees to continuously work and also to continuously be trained. So you can number one, of course, prioritize the safety and the tools that you're going to use. Probably also the budget, the resources, availability of resources. You need to look at those uh, areas as well. And Masood mentioned earlier, planning is the key. You need to have a solid plan on how you're going to do this, and think about your objective. What's your objective of doing this? So that's my thoughts on that question. Masood, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think another important aspect of prioritizing is assessing what is the most important goal of your organization, and if so, like what processes are the one which are more convenient and more are in need of hybrid adoption, right? So these are the two components. And then you also need to identify, like, are your people ready to do something like that, and can they
Readiness.
accept that? Like, for example, we have seen, I'll give you an example of some schools, right? So, or universities where we work, we have faculty and teachers who are like 45, 55, 60 years old, and they're still teaching, which is amazing, which is the
Yes.
knowledge they have is amazing. But on the other hand, their adoption towards technology is not that high when compared to a millennial or someone early adopters, like 20s and 30s in the age group. So it's important for organization to define and refine how they want to take this approach. They should also have a phased approach, I would say, in terms of when they should launch phase one and phase two kind of a thought process. And then choosing right technology end of the day, because if you do not have a technology tool which is easy
That's
to
right.
use, which has simplicity in terms of experience, I think, like, for example, most of the people, whether they are in 50s or 20s, everyone knows how to use Facebook. Pretty much everyone also knows how to use Microsoft Word or Excel. I would not say Excel to much extent, but Word and PowerPoint per se.
Yes.
And but anyone who has knowledge of using these two tools, like Facebook
Yeah.
and Microsoft Word, they can use Neo platform or Matrix platform, left, right, center. Like, they can become master of it in 1 week. So I think that's my feedback on this question, Jeff.
Yeah, and you're right. Having that right tool and the right technology is something that they really need to look at. Something that's easy to use, like Matrix and Neo. I can tell you, this platform is a point and click platform. Even if you don't have proper training, you can navigate on this platform. This is a really easy to use platform. Wait, last two questions that we have here. I wish that we have more time, but we will entertain these last two questions. How can we do, the first one is, how can we deal with employee disconnection and isolation? As I mentioned earlier, communication is the key. We need to be able, even if they're working from home, there are many ways by which we can communicate to our employees. And it doesn't always have to be, what are you doing in your work? Are you able to do your job? Are you able to accomplish this task? Communicating means also saying hi to them and asking how they've been, without asking whether, have you finished what I've asked you to finish or what needs to be finished. We need to know how they're feeling. We need to ask, to say hi and see how they're doing, because that's very important, especially those who are tasked to those who are working from home as opposed to those who are in the office. So they're the ones who are, and I guess this question is coming from because there are employees who will be working from home and others will be working from the office, and those that are working from home are the ones who will be feeling a little bit disconnected and isolated. So it's always good to say hi to them and just see how they've been without asking for the task if it has been completed. And probably the last question for I'll let you have this one, Masood. How can we prevent micromanagement in a hybrid setup? Or probably I'd also give my thoughts, but yeah, go ahead and you take this one first.
It's a tough one, Jen. I mean,
I know.
because uh, I think again, as I was in the beginning of the session, I was pointing out the leaders need to accept the hybrid work model. So where accepting that is not just about saying, okay, hybrid, workplaces or hybrid working model, we need to just go and get that thing done. It's also about ensuring that there's they need to strike a balance in terms of micromanaging, because there
Yes.
shouldn't be micromanaging, if you ask me. You cannot. So let's say, like, if your colleague was sitting across the table in an office and you're continuously asking him or her updates, walking down their desk, and the employees under the fear that boss is here, what should I do? And okay, they might be comfortable working from home because they cannot see the boss, for example. But if a boss is still hunting you down on a chat or on a communication platform, what's happening, that's where things can also become ugly. I think everyone realizes that employee productivity can be achieved multifold the if there is less micromanagement. But that doesn't mean that you should not do micromanagement. Micromanagement has a positive side of that one as well.
Yes.
So for example, like you are handholding an employee in a positive sense. Like, I'll give you an example. We, as Cypher Learning, we are diversified. We are from different countries, and we have teams of different experiences. We have employees like 20, 21 years of age, and we have employees who are like like super experienced as well. And everyone is
Seasoned.
equal.
Seasoned.
Seasoned, yeah. And everyone is equal for us when we are talking,
That's right.
collaborating, and we have fun in engaging. Some when during the meetings, we just don't start a meeting saying that what's happening, what's cooking. That's not the conversation. We normally talk about what's happening around social life. And then on time to time basis, like if someone is posting any comment or writing any feedback on any of our communication platforms, there are tons of people who send heart shapes. And this is, it's normal. Like, the way you are reacting to someone face to face, you just have to
That's
react
right.
the same way on a digital tool. You don't have to become a tech zombie. But so I think that's how you can strike a balance in micromanagement, both being good and as well as not being bad at it. Sure.
Yeah, and let's also take a look at how when we were recruiting employees, part of the requirements is someone who can work with minimal supervision. So
Absolutely.
that means that also we want to supervise them less and allow them to work at their best. So I'm also kind of like not into micromanagement, but you're also right that we have to strike a balance on at least knowing what they're doing. um, and that means knowing because we want to know if they're able to do it right, and we can help them when they need help.
Absolutely.
But also we need to trust our employees that they are doing what needs to be done and the task that's assigned to them. Let's build those trust, and let's be role models ourselves. If our employees are seeing that, hey, our managers are uh, producing output, even if the top management is also not micromanaging them, then our employees will do the same. If they know that you trust them, that they will do their job, they will really do it without you looking over their shoulders every single time. Communication is also very important here. You need to communicate to the employees what needs to be done and how it's done. I know that I mentioned that that's the last question, but there's also a question posted in here. How do we bridge the gap if an employee refuses to communicate? I would just probably say Empathy is a key here. And try to reach out to that employee and try to know what they're feeling and why they're refusing to communicate. I don't think that there's an employee who will refuse to communicate to a manager who's trying to reach out to that employee in the best possible that they can. And if that manager is showing an utmost care to the employees, I always call the people in my department people under my care. They're not my subordinates. They're not my staff. They're not my employees, but they are people under my care. And what do you do with the people under your care? You really take care of them and make sure that you know how what they're feeling. And that's very important, especially when we want to look at this new way of setting up the workplace. And with that, this is kind of like something that I want to leave everybody, despite the pandemic. This is the silver lining. Though the pandemic has brought the world to a standstill, it's also brought out the best in each and every one of us. We became resourceful, we became creative, and we became innovative. And with that, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Thank you very much, Masood, for sharing your insights. It's been very helpful. Thank you so much to all of the participants today. If you need anything, if you have further questions, please feel free to reach out to us. My email is there, and Masood's email is masood@cypherlearning.com. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a happy holiday. It's almost Christmas. Merry Christmas, everybody, in advance. Merry Christmas, Masood. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Jen.
much to everybody who's here. And also, I'd like to express my gratitude to Team Cypher Learning, who's here today in this making this webinar possible. Our marketing team, our edtech team, our account executive team, everybody who's here and supporting Masood and I in this discussion. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great
Thank you.
holiday.